The Elk Man is a man who is charismatic. He enchants women, but he has only one thing in mind, and that's to use the woman for his selfish desires. In typical Elk Man stories, the Elk Man comes into the village, and right away the women start noticing him, and they become attracted to him. And even some married women, they just throw themselves at him, and they all want him for their man. In one story, the men are getting very upset because their daughters are being used by him sexually. And they ask him to leave, but he won't. Because the women are protecting him. Because he'll act like, okay, I'll go then. And then the women say, no, 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 come back. And then they get mad at their fathers and their husbands and brothers and so forth. So they devise a plan where they're going to get rid of him. What they're going to do is they're going to play a game called shinny. And this is something like lacrosse. So they're going to play a game of shinny on a really, really, really windy day. And they marked out an area, an open space, and they were waiting until a windy day would come, a really, really windy day. The plan was that when it gets really windy, they were going to hit the ball clear on the other side of the camp circle, and the men were going to surround the Elk Man, and they were going to use their shinny sticks and really drag it through the ground so that bunch of dirt will come in the air, and the wind blows it all over, creating a little dust storm. And while that dust was in the air, the other men were going to drag this man into the trees, and they were going to cut his legs off, cut his arm off, and cut his head off. So that there would be 6 parts. And there were 2 men assigned to each part, and they were supposed to run away and then split into different directions. They were to run nonstop for 3 days. And then on the 4th day, they were going to rest and then dig a hole. And then they were to burn that body part and throw the ashes in that hole and put some sage on it, because sage is cleansing, and then bury it. That's what the plan was. So it's just vicious, yeah? So they waited, and sure enough, the day came. It was really windy. So the men were saying, hey, let's play a shinny game. And they invited this guy to play with them. And he said, no, I'd rather not. And all the girls were saying, come on. We want to see your legs when you run, and your arms when you swing the stick. They're focusing on his physical features. And so he said, oh, okay. So he went out there, and they played. And then finally they were able to hit the ball clear across the field, and the plan went accordingly. Those men surrounded him, and they hit the ground, so causing this big dust storm. So the women on the other side of the field, they couldn't see what was happening. So then they dragged this man into the trees, and they cut his head off, they cut his arms off and his legs. And 2 men were assigned to take each piece and just run away the opposite direction for 3 days. And then on the 4th day to dig this hole. And then they burned the body part, and they did that. They threw the ashes in the hole, then they put sage on top of it, and then they buried it. Meanwhile, back at that game, after the dust settled, the other men that were still there, they came back, and they said, well, I guess the game's over. So the women were saying, hey, where did that guy go? Meaning the Elk Man. They said, well, he hit the ball way over there, and he went to go get it. And he never came back, so I don't know. Maybe he went away. So the women were all sad. They were all blaming each other. It's because of you, that's why he left. So they were just sad because he's gone. And then the women were blaming each other, that maybe that's the reason why he left. So that was it. Nobody didn't even notice that these 12 men were gone. Their women didn't even care. Because they were just thinking about the Elk Man. It's probably about 3 days later, these men came back. And they were just acting like nothing happened. And their women didn't even care. They weren't even happy to see their men. They were missing that elk man. And so everything seemed to go back to normal. About a week later, here comes this man coming into the village. And everybody's wondering, who is that guy? And he's carrying a shinny stick, and he has the ball. And he comes to the men, and he says, "Hey, I finally found that ball," he said. And here it was the elk man. He came back. He said, "So we finished the game?" And so the women were all happy again because he came back. And so the men, they had to go along because they didn't want to say, "Hey, I thought we cut you in pieces and burned you." They didn't want to say that because then their women would know what they did. So they had to go along with the elk man. So they went back out to the field and they proceeded to play the game. And then after the game, the man had his way with more women. So the situation was even worse than it was before. This story goes to show you that nothing at that time could stop the elk man. Even their holy people would try to do things to stop him. They couldn't. Nothing could stop this guy. Finally, he decided he wanted to marry one of these young girls. And she really felt all proud, because he chose her over all these other girls. So the other girls were all jealous and everything. And the young girl, she was in love with him and she wanted to marry him. But the man said that she would have to come to his camp. And she said, "Sure, of course." And all the other men were just happy that finally he's going to leave. So then the man and woman were married, and so they left. And they traveled for several days, and then they got to this really big body of water that was moving really fast. And the elk man said, "Get on my back, and I'll swim across." So she said, okay. So she got on his back and put her arms around his neck, and he started to go across the water. And then as they were getting wet, she noticed that his hair in the back of his head parted. And she saw something move under the hair. And she thought, is that a bug? So she pushed the hair away, and here was the eye. It blinked at her. And she cleared more hair, and here there was a second face. He had a second face on the back of his head. And that second face smiled at her. And both eyes winked at her. And she really got shocked. And she just pushed the hair over the face. And she said to herself, "I'm just imagining this." She pushed away a warning sign. She rationalized it away because she was focusing on, but he's a beautiful man and I love him. So I'm just imagining things. It's just my fear. I'm just imagining things. And then she would look away to make sure she wouldn't see it again. So then they get to the other side, and then they start walking back to his camp. And then when they get there, they see all these human skeletons. They're laying all around his teepee. And she knows they're human. But she says to herself that, oh, look at all the animals that he's killed. He must be a really good hunter. And look at, it's funny how the bones fell. They almost look like they're human. See, she's rationalizing. She knows they're human, but she doesn't want to admit it because she's too enchanted. She's addicted to this guy. And so then he takes her inside, and there's an old woman cooking, and she's getting ready to make a soup. And she says, oh, good, you're here for dinner, she says. And the elk man says, this is my mother. And the elk man says he's going to go gather some more firewood. And so he leaves. And then the mother says, you have to leave. He's going to eat you. So the mother's trying to help her. So then she says, go this way and this way and this way, and he won't find you. And so she takes off. But the elk man tracks her down. and finds her and takes her back to the camp. And then he puts her in, and the mother has to pretend like she didn't know. So the mom says, "Oh, I didn't even know she was gone. My hearing is really bad, so I didn't even hear her leave." So the elk man ties her down to the ground so she won't move. And then the man takes off. The lady says she has to get something outside, so she goes out. And then at the other end of the teepee, there's two beavers that cut their way inside the teepee. They untie this girl, and they're able to help her get out. And they take off, and they go back to this river, and they know that the elk man is coming. He starts running towards them. And so one beaver starts to build a dam. So he's in front. And so she's behind him. As he's building the dam, the second beaver is behind her, and he's taking it apart and throwing the sticks to the guy in front. This is how they cross the river. And on this day, the water is moving even faster than it was before. So this must be by some rapids. And so the elk man jumps in the water, and he gets caught on something on the bottom, and he is not able to catch them. And so the beavers escort her back to her people, and then they leave her. So she walks back, and she survived an elk man experience. And everybody comes running to her, and they're happy she lived, because the older ones know that she probably would have never came back. So she survived an elk man experience. So this is all symbolic of addiction, becoming addicted to a false idea of love, and you're focusing only on the physical. And this is what can happen, that you will be abused, you will become a codependent, and you will become a victim when you fall for these kind of men. So this is a typical elk man story. It's supposed to be teaching young girls about when you're looking for a man, this is what's going to happen if you just focus on his outward appearance. If you just focus on his voice, the way he talks. If you just focus on those things, and you don't even take the time to know him, you could be going into danger. And he's going to know what to say to enchant you. He's going to tell you things you want to hear. So if you have low self-esteem, and a man is telling you, "Oh, you're the most wonderful, blah, 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 blah," all this kind of thing, he's fishing you. He's going to slowly lure you in until he devours you, and you become his victim. That's how the elk men work. Elk men are literally embodiments of duality. They are oppressors. And sometimes they can appear like a victim to get the attention of women. So they're really tricky. When you're not healthy emotionally, it's very easy for you to be tempted by someone who's like an elk man. They're very charming people. And it's going to lead you to danger. Let's continue the story with the woman who married the elk man. When this woman came back to the camp, everybody was happy to see her because they thought she was going to be devoured. They thought that she was dead. Nobody said, "See, I told you so." Instead, people went up to her and they were just thankful that she survived. And now she knows better. So when a woman survives an elk man experience, they doctor her in such a way where she learns from it. So she will not fall to another elk man. Because if she doesn't learn, she's going to fall for another one. And the next time she could die. So it's very important to make sure when a woman comes out of it that she goes to ceremony and that people pray over her and they help her to clear her mind so that she can come back to sanity. Because when women fall under the influence of an elk man, they kind of lose their minds. So this is why they're trying to make sure that they come back to sanity, and also that they do not become a man-hater. To have a good relationship, you have to be a good person too. This experience could be transformed into a great teaching experience. And then this woman could become a highly respected woman in her camp because of this knowledge she has, that she survived an Elk Man, and now she can teach other women and girls who are coming of age. She basically faced death. Remember in the story, she saw his second face in the back of his head. She really rationalized it away by saying, "Oh, I'm just imagining things." She's teaching you, when a red flag comes up, pay attention. So she can become one of the camp's greatest teachers because she went to the bottom and she survived. So this is why when she showed up to the camp, everybody was happy. And then the next day they took her into ceremony, and they wanted to make sure the energy from the Elk Man is cleansed out of her. And they have to make sure she's emotionally stable. Then they can reach her mind. And then they bring that into balance, the heart and the mind. They bring that back into balance. She knows that like attracts like. So if she heals herself, she will attract a really good man. There's always hope.
To learn more about Lakota spirituality, I have written a book called Wichocha Otechige. This book also includes Lakota Star Knowledge information. All the videos that I make, which are about Lakota spirituality, Lakota Star Knowledge, and cultural information, are based on this book. This book costs 99 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost. And to learn more about Lakota language, I have written a Lakota language book called Chante Etanha Owoglake, Speaking from the Heart. And all my Lakota language videos are based on this book. This book costs 119 American dollars. This price includes the shipping cost. And new for 2024, I have a new book titled Chekia, which means pray. This book includes a CD which has traditional Lakota prayers and traditional spiritual songs. This book cost 49 American dollars, and this price includes the shipping cost. I also teach online, and I give spiritual consultations as well. If you are interested in any of my services and products, you can send payment via PayPal to my email address, which is info@wolakota7.com. You can see the email address on the screen, and it's also in the video description below. When you send your payment, please include your shipping address and your email address. I do have a Patreon account, and you can see the link to that in the description below the video. Here you can also make donations to my channel, and you can also buy my products, my books, and my services concerning private Lakota language lessons and spiritual consultation or spiritual instruction. Again, you can see the Patreon link in the video description below. Ha, Lila Pilamayelo. Thank you very much. In the Lakota way, everything is circular. As a result, we do not have a word for goodbye in the Lakota language. And so instead we say until next time, which in Lakota is Doksha Ake. And I will catch you in the next video.